Frozen Music is a video series from ABB presenting unique building projects and the architects behind them to a global community. Follow us around the world.
Well, welcome back, and we're going on to our next presentation of a winner of a future project category. In this case, it was a winner in the competition entries, and it's for the JANNAT MASJID, and it's by Design and More International. So please, let's hear the presentation.
Hello, thanks everyone. We are really honored to present the project for the second time. The project called JANNAT MASJID. Masjid, it's Arabic word, which is the mosque in English. And it's called the hilltop house of God in the garden of flowering fruit trees. So as mentioned in the Quran, the book of Muslims, that the God created us for one bigger reason, is to meet and to know each other and to respect. So one of the main purpose is to get to know each other. So, and the idea of like, to rethink about, the mosque as a typology in this modern age, it's a bit crucial and important. So there is a critical challenges that facing the mosques nowadays, especially when we build in a different context, like, in Europe. So, because we know that Islamophobia, and the fear from what's happening in mosques around the world, it's something make it more challenging. So our project located in Preston, in the UK, and it was, for me, it's a new land. It's something really to restudy and to consider it. It was really important in the design process. So we started the design process by understanding the role of the mosque in the modern society, because we believe that the mosque, it's only a place for prayer, it's a place of community and unity, and also it's encompassing the inclusion and diversity. So this is the contextual understanding of a person. So we've been lucky that the mosque, it was located in top of small hill, and it's already surrounded by some main streets and the neighborhood on the other side. And the more understanding the historical and contemporary architecture of Preston, it's about monolithic, it's about also the use of materiality and this kind of sense of order to it. It was really important to understand the contextual aspect of the city that we built for. So again, back to the philosophy of Islam, that the mosque must be rooted in both time and location, because the contextuality of mosques, it was really important. And restudying the mosques around the globe, there is no certain shape that the religion said the mosque should look like this, but the people interpret the meaning of Quran and build the mosques in different ways that it suits them life and suits them context. Therefore, there is no a certain shape. However, what happened later, that we, as the continuation of this stopped and became more elemental. It's all about the physical elements. So the shift happened between the architecture and urban form can be seen as a natural expression and values, two more certain elements. And this is what we really trying to avoid in our scheme here. So understanding the more meaningful of the mosques and architecture urbanism, it was the oasis of peace and serenity in all the time. And it was rooted in a local community and has a very big response to it. And also it was more than being a mosque, it was a madrasa. Madrasa means school. As you see here, even in Egypt, the Sultan Hassan Egypt, and also it acts as a series of encounters and negotiation in the context which been built for. It also had this kind of urbanistic juxtaposition between how you enter from the main or from the public to the semi-public to the private, to the semi-private to the very private area. This kind of journey, which I call from the mundane to the spiritual, how you are a very dense context, you manage to do a kind of series and calm oasis. So this is our site. So we started to really go back to the main meanings and the values of the mosques. We start to really to think about the journey that elevates soul and spirit, because it's grounded, it's about heavy, it's about rooted, it's about the presence, about the materiality of the context that we build for, but also about, you know, the light, the soul, the spirit, and the tranquility. So we always say that we have the earth layer, we have the sky layer, and the in-between, the layers of in-between. This is what we are trying to do here in our design. So it's create a place for tranquility and soul filtrations. The people will get into, instead of going to the mosque as elements, series of elements together, no, it's a series of spaces, and this spaces has its own soul that filtrate you. And more important, it's a space for, you know, for the community. It's a seamless connection between the community and the spaces that we create here. So the process started very simply, that we have the site, then we have the city grid, the neighborhood grid, then we have the Qibla grid towards Mecca. Then we started to create this kind of courtyards, and we create a kind of riwaq. The riwaq is like, you know, the arcade. It's shaded to protect people from rain. Then we started to have the access from everywhere, and this is also a good idea to present that this is a place for community. If there is no barriers, it will be reached from everywhere. Then we have this urban domain, you know, to create an urban domain. So the mosque, it will not act only as a mosque, it will act as a park for different use and different activities. Then we have this sunken communal spaces. Then we have an urban definitions like the lanterns at light, so that people can recognize this is a symbol of, you know, unity and for community. This is how it looks, you know, the project into the site. It's also negotiate the topology and stands on the top to be more recognized. And also the most important, that, you know, the people can reach from the basements, from the other streets in a very way that helps them to have this kind of soul filtration. This is how it sits and how it looks. So actually it's like a pavilion inside a bigger English garden. Here, as I said, it's layer of filtrations that people can ascending up, and this is also a way of filter the soul. Then they come to the inner plazas, then they start to get into the mosque in these layers that filtrate the mind and the soul and body to go there for communication and congregation. It's not only as a prayer space. Also, the materiality was so much important because it needs to be more contextual. So we use the crystal, so we use the brick, and we use a bit dark brick from outside. However, from inside, we have this kind of another different brick, which is like more orange. So it's also the idea of the open air courtyards and the sah. As you see from different angles from the project. Also the arcade, it gives a bit of definition on top of this hill site. Also, you know, it's about the spaces. And the floor plan, it was very simple, and, you know, it's create this idea of negotiation with the site, and the people go through a journey to reach to the main space. And here, you know, the project, how it looks from outside, it's a building for all people. And we managed really to present this idea. It's a garden, and the building into the garden, and at night it's illuminate. And this is also a metaphor of a culture, how the culture can enlighten our life. This is the courtyard, the spaces that you reach to the main masjid. Also, it's a space or a place of reflection. It's about your inner soul and outside world. So, as you see here, you know, we use the water elements, the vegetation, and also the building. It will look like as a background for the activities on the back. And from inside, you know, it's a space for tranquility, and the light's coming mostly from up. So this will help people to focus into the activities during the day. And the idea of the landscape, it was really described from the Quran, which is underneath which rivers flow. This is a verse in Quran. It's a symbolism of the Islamic garden. And so most of the trees here, it will be edible. It's something that everyone can use it. So the lushness and, you know, surrounded by this nice greenery. And also the sunken plazas act as a space for community. The mosque become both an oasis of peace and faithful social hub for the community. So it's for all religions to meet and congregate here. This is the series of filtration that you reach to the main mosque. So it's just take you through it. And at the end, we managed to create a place of peace, one which draws both worships and other members of the community in a form of shared space of congregation, discussion, and discourse, and a social activity, because we believe that, this kind of places should be a symbol of unity and ultimate source of diversity in creation. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for presenting that. I'm going to start with a quick question before asking the other jurors to make their comments. When you show some of the historic mosques, and indeed when you're showing the layout of your own, they look absolutely fascinating. I mean, the relationship of spaces, the creation of regular volumes within what might be quite irregular sites, and how they deal with existing city fabric or existing buildings. And so I think there's something really interesting about the internal organization of what you're doing and of mosques in general. Where I struggle a little bit is to see how that relates to the context in this particular instance in Preston, where I can see how you might work that sort of series of relationships into a dense city centre. I find it harder to see how it works in a suburban context, which is what I see, I understand the site in Preston would be. Perhaps you could say a little bit about that, the relationship between the building as a series of forms and the context and the layout of the context.
Yeah, thank you for this question, because I think, understanding the historical background of the mosque, how became that, centers in its location, because they always start usually historically with the mosque as the seed of the community. Then the community grows around. Here we have a different scenario, that we have already an existing community and we build on that community. But we have certain issues, that we have the city grid already, that that all the buildings align it, and we have a main force direction of the praying direction was towards Mecca, the Qibla. So the juxtapose, which I call it, between the conflict between this, or the clash between these two grids, it's create a very decent and nice spaces, and we use these spaces for, like as I said, soil filtration. We don't want people to open the door and get into the building. It's the idea to enjoy the journey to doing these rituals. Plus, we managed to put the building in a corner and let the community enjoy the rest of the site to be like a park or a garden, English garden. So it's also another idea, instead of putting the building on the middle and dominating the whole site with a monumental building, we just pushed in the corner and we left the rest to be more garden area. So I wish this answered your question.
Thank you. Peter.
Yes, I think there's the issue of a religious building of any kind in the English context, to follow on from you, and I think the traditional sort of church in the village, immediately the building stops, then the normal sort of nonchalance of English countryside comes through. Here, it seems there's a sense, because you set up the diagram as you do, that the inner courtyard is very important. That in a sense, and you said that the community will you see them walking in that inner courtyard. So you put a world within a world. Almost, you say, a prescribed area will be this religious place, and the building per se will sit even within that. And so I think, and then the sort of higgledy-piggledy of the English suburbs will happen, whatever happens. But when it hits that courtyard, stops. That is, I think, rather different from how major buildings have followed the nonchalance of the situation. I don't see, I mean, I suppose you could say there's no obligation to do other than that. But I do understand Jeremy's question that what the other thing is that, because it is, as with the previous project that we've just seen, it is, you know, the most interesting thing in the district, and is different. And perhaps, you know, you could say, well, therefore the courtyard part is really the building, and then the more solid element is within that. But it is an intriguing thing, because we tend, other than certain old university towns, we tend not to have enclaves in quite that same way. But maybe that doesn't matter, you know.
So you need me to elaborate more about this topic. You know, I always believe that, you know, the building, it's not only for themselves, but it's about the value that create for community. So when we are building in a context that, you know, as I explained before about, you know, the Islamophobia thing, and you're building in a non-Muslim country, the majority is not Muslims. So it's bring the idea of sensitivity. So about, you know, you know, doing a wall in a wall, the idea is not a wall. It's just like, you know, defining the territory of the prayer area could be, but the rest of the site, it's totally open for the community use. And also the idea of the penetrated courtyards, it gives this kind of like, you know, penetration. You know, it's not a solid composition. You know, I think one of the good things that also I really realized when we get to this design, it will be seen differently from each corner, from each aspect, from each time you come to this site, you'll experience it in a different way. And the most thing really I invest with the team when we are designing this is how to create this experience meaningful for the Muslims and non-Muslims when they come anytime during the prayer time or non-prayer time, to have this kind of experience that they can share together. So I hope this may answer some of your concerns about the project.
Ankur, would you like to ask a question or make a comment?
Yeah, just a thought, and it's just coming to me, and I'm sure it's a challenging task to actually take on something of this nature, especially build a religious building. But in the context of what you spoke about, I'm just wondering that, and picking up from the other conversations, that, you know, in some way the building still has a sense of a very strong sense of presence. And I'm just wondering, would it be something that you would consider where you kind of take the building to a level where you spoke about the porosity in terms of the experience and the connect with the urban fabric, but also in terms of its presence, like if the building was to become a non-building, or almost kind of come to a point where it doesn't really hold up a certain weight or a certain position, you know, which in a way is disruptive at the moment, because that's what's kind of putting religions under buckets or a certain presence. And I mean, more in a contemporary way of looking at what it's doing to this idea of what religious buildings should be and could be.
I got your question, because, you know, this what you are talking about, it was the first approach when we approached this competition, is to do non-building approach. It's more landscape, it's more humble, more screed, dissolve on the landscape. But at the end, you know, we work for a certain brief, and I believe that changes need to happen gradually. It's not easy to convince that the building, it will be bad on the landscape in a certain way. But the idea is also, it's good to celebrate, you know, and it was the dialogue inside myself and the team who are designing this. Sometimes it's also too good to celebrate the spaces that we create. And, you know, we are trying to make it a modest, you know, like it's a strong presence, yes, but when you look to the details of it, it's very simple. It has this kind of minimal effect, either in interior or exterior. I think this is like, you know, the midway between monumentality and humility or humbleness, because at the end there is a certain program need to be built and a certain function, but how we respond to it, I believe that we managed to do somehow a soft threshold between the community and the site.
Okay, Mariana.
And also, I believe there's a will for visibility here, right, of the mosque. I think that you didn't want to go completely invisible because it's all about making the community more visible and more understandable, approachable, perhaps. So
thank you, Mariana, because thank you so much, because one of the things.
Congratulations for the amazing illustrations. Amazing illustrations, very beautiful and sensible.
No, thank you, because one of the main items also the people effort what Muslims are doing inside the mosques. So imagine if you did do it completely, hidden. It will bring more.
And almost like a bunker. I don't like the idea of making it invisible either.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. I'm afraid we've run out of time, but thank you for presenting the project. And we're now going to take a slightly longer break, about a 20-minute break, when we will move on to the next in our winners of future project categories. So thank you very much. Thank you to all the presenters this morning. Thank you to the jurors. And see you in about 20 minutes. Thank you.
See you.